How does holding an emotion in real life looks like? And when I say holding an emotion, I mean not suppressing it, not running away from it, but actually holding it so you can get the best results in your life. This video is going to be based on neuroscience and neurobiology. And also from real work that I've done on myself and also the real work that I've done on my clients. Because I thought that there's so much content about emotions and about nervous system regulation, but very few actually are putting that in a real life context. Usually you've got something like someone doing some breathing exercises or certain ventral vagal techniques, and the thing is that, guys, that is not really real life, because the emotional regulation doesn't show up when you are in a calm environment and when you are not triggered. No, emotional regulation and truly your identity shows up when things are going pear-shaped, when things are really triggering you, when you are really feeling a lot of fear and still decide consciously not to act upon that fear. Even though inside there is a storm or a tidal wave of emotions. That is emotional regulation. So a lot of the examples that you are given or techniques that you are given around holding an emotion in real life are actually not based on real life. So I want to give you almost like a client profile, and we're gonna put that client in the context of work, because I think that work is relatively neutral, but you can also apply that example to any other context in your life, be it with your family or friends, etc. Because again, relationships are relationships. There's human to human interaction, and they are sometimes very, very difficult to navigate. And the client profile that I wanted to start with, because a lot of the times, people will have certain coping strategies to numb their emotions or dissociate from their emotions. A lot of the times, and this is what I encountered in my private practice, is that people are really shutting down a lot and there's a lot of withdrawal. And this is kind of the client profile that I wanted to bring forward, because this is actually really common. That's showed up as something quite prevalent in my private practice, like I said, and it really showed up in my own work as well. And it usually shows up, because the clients that I'm working with, their, I would say, profile is that they're people who achieved a lot. They are very intelligent, highly capable, yet there's a lot of, I would say, emotional dysregulation that doesn't really show up as them being dysregulated. No, they are dysregulated inward, but outward they are presenting as an utter calm, and because they are shutting down a lot. So they are withdrawing, they are shutting down, and that they have this kind of mask of regulation and calmness, but actually that is them shutting down, because they really don't, that they are scared of other people's reactions to what they are actually feeling, and they don't want to hurt other people. That's why they are holding their emotions, but that is actually withdrawal and shutdown. They almost like dissociate a lot of the times from the conversations. They are very critical of themselves. So this is the client profile that I wanted to bring into the context of the work environment. So that client, let's say, is triggered in a work environment, and like I said, the tendency of this particular client is to withdraw or shut down. But the thing is that you can put any other coping strategy that you actually have. So let's say when you are encountering conflict or a confrontation in your life, and it might, that confrontation, of course, will look different when you have a confrontation with a partner or a confrontation, let's say, with a boss. But I want you to think about, okay, what are my coping strategies? How do I actually hold my emotions? Yeah. What is actually happening? What are you actually doing? because this is really crucial. Otherwise, you're just going to be talking in general terms or thinking in general terms. So let's say you're at work, you're coming into work, but your boss says something about it. They give you feedback about something that you've done, let's say yesterday, and maybe that wasn't really that good. And then woof, you feel suddenly that wave in the body. So that client suddenly feels wave in the body. So they receive feedback from the boss, which, let's say this feedback is more like constructive criticism than anything else. And they are feeling themselves having that tidal wave of emotion, and they are like literally like shutting down. They don't know like what to say. They say a lot of the times it's almost like it looks like you're calm, but you just almost like you don't know what to do. Inside you're really panicking. So there's a lot of like cortisol and adrenaline running within you already. So it's like you're being flooded. So your nervous system is already being flooded by different chemicals that are supposed to help you in taking, adequate action. But usually withdrawal and shutting down is not an adequate action. Now at this point, what is happening, and this is what I noticed with my clients when we were discussing what had been happening in those moments of activations and triggers, is that that typical client, like I said, who withdraws and shuts down, they have a very, very critical inner dialogue. So immediately they're taking that constructive criticism that is a neutral thing, and actually constructive criticism is useful in a work environment. They feel guilty and they feel shame. So that also creates a very shameful and guilt-tripping dialogue, inner dialogue. You've done this again. You're a piece of, whatever it is, whatever you are doing, your inner dialogue plays a crucial role in that moment of trigger. So you're encountering the boss gives you the feedback. You have that tidal wave of emotion, and instantaneously the shame, that guilt kicks in, or something, let's say you basically call that tidal wave guilt and shame, and the dialogue comes in straight away. So you are basically berating yourself, despite of the fact that your boss actually was just give you maybe a comment about that. Now, that inner dialogue needs to be addressed, because that inner dialogue is basically making those emotions stronger. The way your conscious mind is directing your body, your inner dialogue, all that's going to impact your emotional state, and that's going to impact your nervous system. So if your inner dialogue evolves around that absolutely needs to be addressed. And what I would suggest for you in this particular case is, the first thing you have to almost like start teaching your conscious mind to have a completely different self-talk. And that's going to be something that you have to probably work on a lot, because the habitual thoughts, they don't just go away like that. They are basically the neural pathways that you walked back and forth so many years, that to cut them off and create a new one instead is going to take some repetition in different contexts, and it's going to take some time, because it's going to take some repetition and some patience and dedications on your part. So you have to address the inner dialogue to hold the emotion. Now, the inner dialogue, I want you to think about it in a way that make it very grounded, science-based, and just scientific. So you stick to the facts. So in that particular situation, let me just give you an example, let's say, of how you could deal with it without going into the shutting down and withdrawal. So what you say to yourself, within yourself, okay, I am feeling a very intense emotion. I am feeling it, and okay, I'm gonna let it run its course. But in the meantime, it's really important that I'm gonna stick with the facts. So my boss just gave me a feedback based on my performance, let's say yesterday. And when I actually think about my performance, yes, maybe I made some mistakes. So that's absolutely fine. I cannot correct them. My boss is actually okay for me to give that feedback, because that's absolutely fine for them to do that. That's actually really good for me. If I'm going to take that feedback in a neutral way. And then you can think about, okay, so now what I'm also noticing is that in my inner dialogue, when I hear someone telling me some constructive criticism, I am interpreting that as an attack. And then I feel like I need to defend, but in my case, it's almost like I don't want to defend because I don't want to like be aggressive or something. So I am shutting down. So this is the self-talk, yeah? So my immediate response is to guilt trip myself and shame myself. I'm gonna stop doing that and I'm gonna actually look at my strengths. So look at what I'm actually doing correctly in my work, in my life, which are also the facts, and I'm just gonna focus on that. Now, as you can see, your inner dialogue, if you have this particular problem, is probably very different from what I just said. Because what I just said is regulated, is fact-based, and it's neutral. It's soft, but it's also honest. That's the inner dialogue that I want you to start practicing from now on. And when you're going to be holding that emotion, because you're probably really good at holding the emotion because obviously you're shutting down, but because you're shutting down, you cannot see the full picture, and that inner dialogue that is really, we can call it toxic or perfectionistic, whichever, is just enhancing those emotional states that are already running within you anyhow. Once you're going to start practicing that, I can promise you, just things will change for you, because it's inevitable that when your inner dialogue changes and the way you approach yourself changes, then the results, the outcomes will be different. Practice this what I just said, holding an emotion in that particular way. And so holding an emotion, you can use techniques like breathing, or whatever it is, the techniques, you can use it to let the emotion run smoothly for you. But that inner dialogue is really crucial. So I trust that was helpful. Like, share, and subscribe. Also check my Patreon account. And also if you want to book a session with me, you've got the links out below. I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye-bye.